Well, today we are going to return to the narrative lectionary, which is a way of kind of going through different major biblical stories throughout the year. And in this story today, I made this joke, or I said this morning, and I don't know if it had anything to do with the weather, because it wasn't snowing when I got here today. But this reading kind of starts to point our feet towards Advent and Christmas. So merry early Christmas to you all. This also is our start to our stewardship season, and one of the things that our text invites us into today is really the power of God's dream for the world, and how God invites us to dream dreams of significance and how we serve together. This is Genesis 37, 1-11. Jacob settled in the land where his father Isaac had lived as an alien, the land of Canaan. This is the story of the family of Jacob. Joseph, Jacob's youngest son, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flocks with his brothers. And he was the helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children, because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a long robe with beautiful sleeves. But when his brothers saw that his father had loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. And once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. Joseph said to them, "Listen to this dream that I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. And suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, and then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us?" And so they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. And then Joseph had another dream, and he told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream, and the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." And when he told it to his father and his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What kind of dream is this that you have had? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow down to the ground before you?" So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father continued to ponder his son's dreams. This is the word of God, the word of life. Thanks be to God. One of the big themes that comes out of this potent story about Joseph and his family is the power and the danger of dreams. Dreams can motivate us. They drive us. They push us to envision something beyond. And like Joseph, they might also get us in trouble. Are there any dreamers in the house today? What about daydreamers? I think being a dreamer is one of the ways that God uniquely wires all of us. What are your dreams? What are the dreams that you have for yourself, for your family, for your children and grandchildren, for your neighbors and friends, for the community and the place that you live and call home, and also for this church and for this family of Christ together? It's not just what you can or can't remember while you sleep. I can never remember I used to always be able to remember my dreams. And now I just dream that I get enough sleep. But not just what you can or can't remember when you sleep, but what energizes you, what propels you, what inspires you in the midst of the messy and the mundane in life. What are your dreams? I know one of the things that propels me and helps me dream is other dreamers, is being in a community of people dreaming. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. And Harriet Tubman, the great conductor of the Underground Railroad, once said that every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength and the patience and the passion to reach for the stars and change the world. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. And one of the things that I love is that how a circle or a cycle of dreamers inspires more dreams. It opens up the potential to share more dreams. One dream inspires more dreams. One dreamer inspires other dreamers. This last weekend, I got to spend time at the finish line of the Twin Cities Marathon. It's not a place I had ever dreamed of being. It's not been on my bucket list. But I watched and I got to thank God as my partner Ashley ran under the big digital clock that marked her time for the 26.2 mile completion. It was her first marathon, a dream that she had worked at and worked at and worked at. And it was one of the most inspiring things that I've ever seen her do. And I was just so proud, and that's kind of how dreams start, that all the work and the hours that she put in and getting through the rainy and snowy and hot days and sore shins and early mornings. But what also struck and surprised me, having never been to a marathon finish before, was as I was cheering and yelling and supporting her, there were all these other people encouraging their loved ones, all these other people supporting and yelling and screaming in support of their partners and children and grandpas and grandmas and friends and neighbors. Dreamers inspiring other dreamers, inspiring other dreamers, inspiring other dreamers. And you couldn't help, as you were there, to cheer on people that you had no idea who they were. It inspired everyone to support and encourage all of those other dreamers there. And it was this beautiful display of how all of our dreams can be connected and lifted up together. All the hopes and dreams and plans and training and trust and challenging each other toward that goal of 26.2 miles. Never giving up, pushing on through the pain. And I could just see God's Spirit moving and showing up through all the screams and support and determination of those runners and advocates for their dreams. In our text from Genesis today, this marathon for Jacob and his family all starts with this singular dream. It's going to be a long road, and it will be an incredibly difficult journey for everyone involved, not just for Joseph, but more than his brothers even know. One of the things that the commentator Walter Brueggemann writes about this text is that the dream is the unsettling work of God on which everything else depends. Without the dream, there is no Joseph and no narrative. Without the dream, there would be no trouble or conflict with his brothers. Without the dream, there would be no grief or loss as he is sold into slavery and his dad grieves for him. The dream sets its own course. And in the end, we're thankful that the dream prevails even over all of the tensions of this broken family. As you probably know from the story, and we'll get more through the rest of the chapters in Genesis, Joseph's dreams still have a long way to go to be fulfilled. And the irony in all of it is the fact that the brothers' choice to challenge and hate and turn on Joseph is ultimately what the very thing that leads to the fulfillment of the dream. The brothers assume that the dream was about Joseph's own ambition, his own preferential treatment and success. They all assume that the dreams of them bowing down to Joseph was this continuation of his status over them. But the truth that we see and we hear, and when the dream gets fully lived out, is that Joseph's role is not one of power over or oppression, but ultimately will be this beautiful sign of God's provision in Egypt. Though the spark of this dream is incredibly challenging and hard for the family to see, Joseph's leadership and God's care for the people will be what ultimately leads to their own end to starvation and their own salvation. So one of the lessons in this story is that you can't always judge a dream by its cover. Sometimes what we need and what God's world needs is a dream that deeply challenges us, that helps us move beyond our own egos and family dysfunction and helps us work together towards a common goal. The promise that is that God is always moving and working amidst those challenges and that frustration and dysfunction. God's dream doesn't stop because of challenging circumstances or broken relationships or hard days or snowy ones. God's desire for the world and God's desire for good in the world continues to unfold despite it all. And God has not and will not step out of this messy history. That's not to say that we might not unexpectedly, like Joseph, find ourselves in what looks like Egypt or worse. But God has worked through that too. I think that's such an encouraging word for us today and the dreams that God is still unfolding in this community. For each of our own dreams, for each of the dreams that we have for our families, and for our grandkids, and for this community, and for this church, knowing always that God can work through that too. God can work through our dreams too. Today, we're going to be hearing from one of the members of our stewardship team, and we'll be kicking off the stewardship season for the next 5 or so weeks. And it'll be around this theme of God's purpose, our gifts. And I think it's this beautiful invitation for all of us to look at our shared dreams and visions for us, for our families, for this community, and God's dream for this church. It's an invitation to dream together, to wonder together, to align our dreams together, to look towards the same finish line together, to be challenged and to wonder if we are being bold enough or risking enough for the sake of God's vision here at Trinity. One of my favorite dreamers, probably one of yours too, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., once said that he was asking this question about whether the church will be bold enough. And he said, will the church be a thermostat or a thermometer in our world? Will the church be a thermostat or a thermometer in the world? I just love that question, whether the church will set the temperature or whether we'll respond to the temperature. In Minnesota, you just never know. And so we're a people that consistently seeks to be willing to help set the temperature. Set the temperature in our world today, to cheerlead and support, to care and love, to shelter and to serve, to hunger and to thirst for justice, to help heal divisions and dysfunction in our world, to keep striving for God's dream of love and purpose with so many of our shared gifts. One of the most amazing and scary things about this story is that Joseph is actually willing to share his dream. He's willing to set the temperature, even though he probably knows it's not going to be easy. He's willing to put his dream out into the world, even though it could and does get him in trouble. Are we willing to put our dreams out into the world? Are we willing to risk and live together and finish the race together? Are we willing to lace up our shoes and put our dreams out there? May we be a community that supports and cheerleads and seeks this kind of dreaming and aligning together towards God's dream. May we strive towards that goal in the finish line of a future where Christ's love and peace makes the world a better place. Thanks be to God. Amen.